We're holding Sefer Mishlei, chapter 19, Perek Yutet. Tov rash holech betumo meikesh sfatav hu behu chesil. It's better a poor man who walks innocently than one with perverse lips who is a fool. He's comparing the poor man to the wealthy man. And one usually thinks that he is out to gain or is out to benefit a lot more from a wealthy man. And Shlomo Melech says that's not always so. One is better off. Tov rash holech betumo. One is better off associating, befriending a poor man who walks innocently. He's not crooked. He's not a liar. He won't cheat you. The chances of you benefiting from him are greater than one who may have money but he has perverse lips, who is a fool. In other words, calls him a fool because that individual who has money may show that he's your friend, but not necessarily be a true friend. And that's what he describes it as being one with perverse lips and a fool, because he thinks he can fool you, but in the end he's a fool. So, tov rash olech betumo, it is better for one to befriend those who are simple, even though they don't have money, because at least they are innocent, at least they are good, at least they are predictable, much more than the one who is ikesh sfatav, who has perverse lips, who is a fool and therefore unpredictable. You will see various pesukim in this perek and in other perakim where he makes various comparisons of those individuals who appear to us to be good, but they're no good, and those that naturally society pushes away, shows no sympathy for, but they may be actually better people. And then we will see that as we go along the perek. Gam belo da'at nefesh lo tov ve'atz beraglaim choteh. The translation is, it is also not good that a soul be without knowledge, and he who hastens with his feet sins. There are two concepts over here. One is related to what we just spoke about. We spoke about a simple person who has no knowledge. So Shlomo Melech says, well, it is for the benefit, for the good of that individual that he does acquire some knowledge, because to be innocent and to be ignorant is also not good. The commentaries explain that in order for a person to be righteous, to be an honest individual, he has to learn. Innocence is one thing. Righteousness or honesty is a whole different idea. If one does not learn, one does not know what means honest and what does not mean honest. There are certain halachot, what one can do, what one cannot do. Not everything is black and white. So even though it's good to be innocent, but it's important to be knowledgeable. So that's what he says, Gam belo da'at nefesh lo tov. It is also not good that a soul be without knowledge. And then he explains, ve'atz beraglaim choteh. One who hastens with his feet, he rushes to do things, is rushing to sin. The reason why that happens is because he does not contemplate on what he's about to do. He does not reflect on where he's going. He rushes to do something, and as a result of that, he will make mistakes. So you have an impulsive individual who will also get himself into trouble, not because he's not knowledgeable necessarily, but simply because he does not analyze what he's about to do. People rush into all sorts of shady investments. If they would have thought many times over, if they would have consulted with somebody who's more experienced, they would have been told, this guy's a con artist. Don't give him your money. You know how many people have put down their money on a major project of construction and the contractor ran away with the money? I'm sure you're familiar with at least one such story, either from yourself or from someone else. It is never a good idea to rush into anything. And in this country they say anything that sounds too good cannot be true. Right? So atz beraglaim, he's talking about the one who hastens his feet. Choteh. Why is he a sinner? Because he's karov lemezid. There's something called karov lemezid. In other words, you're not a shogeg, you did not do something unintentionally, you did something closer to mezid. In other words, had you looked into it, you would have seen that there's something wrong with it. Since you did not, it's your fault. Now, we're talking about an individual that does things below that. One interpretation was one who has no knowledge, it's no good. But the second interpretation is to do things without that, To do things without that means to not be aware of something. We're not talking about necessarily rushing into it, but just you did something accidentally. And that can happen. The Torah prescribes a korban hatat for someone who does something bishgaga. You committed a sin unintentionally, below that requires a korban hatat, depending on what was done. What's the korban hatat for? That you bring an animal because you acted like an animal. In other words, you did not think, you did not watch yourself, and therefore things happen accidentally or unintentional. As you know, in Judaism we very much firmly believe that nothing is by accident, really, en mikrim. So how does somebody do a sin by accident? Hashem definitely does not want him to commit a sin. So rabbis tell us that it's very possible that once upon a time he did something intentionally. And as a result of having done once something intentionally, the next time around, it's easier for him to do it unintentional. Ki lo yuneh latzadik kol aven. To a tzaddikim, no harm will befall. Hashem will not make them fall and make a mistake when we talk about mitzvot and averot, sins and the like. They are offered certain protection, but Hashem only protects those who first protect themselves. One who does not watch himself, it's very possible the next time around it will happen again, even though it's unintentional. At one time it was his fault because he did it intentionally. So therefore here, when he says gam belo dat nefesh lo tov, even if something is done not intentionally, it's not a good sign. It's a sign that there's a blemish there from before. Rabbis tell us on the first few words of this pasuk, gam belo dat nefesh lo tov, that it is not, we're dealing with an individual who's not a good soul. Why? Because he forces his wife. When we're talking about intimacy between husband and wife should be something consensual. When the two are ready, the two want it, not when the husband is in the mood and forcing this on his wife. That's called below dat, without her approval. So they learn that out from this pasuk too. Not that they need this pasuk, but that is also insinuated in this pasuk that there are certain men who behave this way, and that's a nefesh lo tov. That is not a good soul. One who forces his way on his wife. Another example of below dat is one who has intimate relationship with his wife close to her veset, close to her menstrual period. A religious, observant woman keeps track of her timing, and that's because it's very important. You don't want it to happen at the time when you're together, because it's a big sin. There's a certain amount of time, at least a half a day, before, depending if the woman is regular or not. If she's not very regular, it's a little bit more complicated. There are certain days that she has to watch out for. When the two cannot be together, you don't want to take a chance. It's risky. Throughout the whole month, you don't have to expect accidents. And accidents can happen, but you don't have to expect it during the period when she's clean. But when it gets very, very close, and some women have certain feelings, so headaches and the like right before it happens, or if the date is getting close, you have to be extra careful. So anybody who's not careful, that's also another example of gam below dat, nefesh lo tov. This is not a good man. And therefore if he's rushing to do it, he's a choteh, he's a sinner. The next pasuk is a very significant pasuk in describing many, many individuals in this world. Ivelet adam tesalef darko ve'al Adonai yiz'af libo. The way he translates it is, a man's folly perverts his way, but his heart is wrath, or he's angry with Hashem. I'll simplify it. It just happens to be that Ivelet Adam, the folly, the mistakes, the shtuyot that a person commits, right? Because of those shtuyot, tesalef darko, he is misled. He goes in the wrong direction. It's his fault. He did shtuyot. He committed acts of nonsense, of folly. And therefore, tesalef darko, he went astray. Something happened to him. He lost money, he got hurt, whatever. But guess what happens afterwards? After he gets hurt, ve'al Hashem yiz'af libo, he's upset at Hashem. Who am I talking about? I'll give you a quick example. Somebody who just went through the Holocaust. We're not going to judge anyone who went through the Holocaust. We don't know how we would react in their place. So we're not going to judge. But this was a typical reaction by many of them. You exist? God, where were you? How did you allow all this to happen? Right? I'm sure you've heard something like that. These kinds of complaints come because a person is mesalef darko. He is devious in his ways. he's not following the way of the Torah. He therefore commits shtuyot, or in this case he didn't commit any shtuyot, but he is puzzled. He's puzzled by what happens, and he doesn't have an explanation for it, and therefore complains to Hashem. Had he studied Torah, he would not have any questions, he would have no complaints, but because of his shtuyot, because of his pursuit of nonsense, because of him not being a serious individual, therefore, tesalef darko, it causes him to be devious in his ways, it misleads him, and it basically turns him off the derech of the Torah, and that is why he complains to Hashem, not realizing that the proper thing to do is to accept that out of love, that Hashem knows what He's doing, that there's a reason for everything, and if he would read the Torah, he would have a partial explanation, not a full explanation, but a partial explanation of what exactly happened. During times of pain and suffering, people complain. And those who complain, it's because they don't have that strong faith and bitachon in Hashem that they would have had they just pursued the regular way, the way of the Torah. But in this case, we're talking about an ivelet adam tesalef darko. He's going by his own personal, custom-made way. He wants to do certain things that are contrary to the will of the Torah, and what that does is tesalef darko. It makes him deviate, and he has his own ideas and his own thoughts of what these things mean. And these thoughts and these ideas are contrary to Jewish perspective and Jewish outlook. The Jewish perspective says a lot about why tzaddik veralo rasha vetovlo, why the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper. A major concept that is elaborated in Judaism extensively. There are various pesukim in the Torah, there's a lot of commentaries, but a person who has his own mindset, who did not learn, he has the wrong ideas, and then he complains to Hashem. So it's his own fault. Next pasuk, Hon Yosif Re'im Rabim, Vedal Mere'eo Yipared. Wealth adds many friends. We've read a similar pasuk before, but a poor man is separated from his friend. The rich have many friends, and the poor don't. Now what is he talking about here? What is he adding over here? He says like this. Remember this idea that the rich people befriend them, and the poor, nobody wants to be their friend. We've already spoken a little bit about this, but every time that he repeats the idea, he adds additional information. What he's telling us of here is this: these are the facts. He's saying, you know what? Hon Yosif Ra'im Rabim. It's just a fact. When people have money, they will also have many friends. Everybody will want to be their friends. And those who become poor, once upon a time they were rich. In other words, they become poor, their friends will leave them. What he's telling us over here is that even though this is the way of the world, this is what you see out there in the street, it shouldn't be like that. In other words, he's telling us you should love everybody regardless of whether they're rich or poor. You should like them at all times, not only when they're doing well. So he's telling us the facts as they are, but he's also communicating to us how terrible this is, how this should not be. You know, he's not just telling us, this is the way life is, and no, try to fix it. In other words, don't be, if you're in that situation, if you have any influence, don't allow this to happen. You were friendly to someone who once upon a time had money, and now you're no longer his friend. Shame on you. You just liked it for his money, or because he invited you over for Shabbat, or because he helped you out. Now he can't, so you're no longer his friend. That's not right. That's not fair. So he's telling us what the facts are, but obviously he's telling us that this is not something that we should be doing. This is not right. Et shekarim lo yinakeh ve'afiach kezavim lo yimalet. A false witness will not go unpunished, and one who speaks lies will not escape. That's a good translation. Here we have two individuals, one who is a false witness, and one who's yafiach kezavim. Yafiach kezavim means one who speaks lies. What does it mean he will not go clean, he will not escape? Even though he appears to be getting away with it here, we must never forget that just like there is a bet din shel mata, there's a bet din shel mala. There's a heavenly court too. And if the downstairs court makes a mistake, certain things were left out in court that the judge was unaware, or it was the jury that determined something and it's not right, don't worry about it. If there were lies involved, lo yinakeh, the liar will not get away with it. At some point he will be punished by the heavenly court. That's the first part of the pasuk. Lo yimalet, The second part of the pasuk said, talking about the one who lies, false testimony, he will not escape. In other words, in the end, all those who lie will be discovered. So he's saying two things. The liar does not get away with it, he's punished. In the end, lo yimalet, he does not escape, he doesn't get away with it, he will be discovered. Next pasuk. Rabim yechalu pnei nadiv v'chol hare'a leish matan. This is also a similar idea to what we just said. The great will beg the favor of a generous man. I wouldn't say the great here, I would say the many. Many people will beg the favor of a generous man, and everyone is a friend to a man who gives gifts. What is he talking about here? He's talking about something called ahava hatluya b'davar. In Judaism there is a concept called a love which is tluya b'davar, which is dependent on something. And there is a love shelot tluya b'davar, which is more platonic or altruistic, they call it in fancy English. It's a pure love. He says when you see people who befriend someone who gives out money, who's very generous, you should know that for the most part, this is ahava shetluya b'davar. They don't love him. It's only because of the money. V'chol hare'a leish matan. That's the second part of the pasuk. And everyone is a friend of a man who gives gifts. And that is why the Balei Musar used to say as follows: you want to test a friend that you've been kind to? You think he likes you? Stop being kind to him. In other words, don't be cruel, but stop being very generous and very kind to him, and see what happens. If he still likes you, then he's a good friend. If all of a sudden he lets go of you, then you've just found out that he wasn't a true friend. So who needs to do this? One who's being very kind and generous to others. That's why he mentions this. Rabim yechalu pnei nadiv v'chol hare'a leish matan. These individuals who are generous and kind just happen to have many friends who come and befriend them and ask them for favors. This is usually an ahava shetluya b'davar. It's not real friendship. It's not real re'im. And you can test it out. Good advice. You know, it's incredible when I talk to, especially to kids, teenagers, who have not gone through life and they don't have that much experience. They're very innocent. They really believe that people are very friendly, very kind to them, and they can't see that there's something else there, that there's some interest perhaps, that it's not real friendship. And that is what Shlomo Melech, Chacham Mikol Adam, who was the wisest man, who had a lot of experience, gives us all this information firsthand, so that we should avoid making the mistakes in trusting just anybody, giving loans without documenting the loan, without witnesses, or being a co-signer, which he totally discourages, which we spoke about many, many times. He says, just be careful. The rabbis tell us in different words, every human being, kabdeu v'hashdeu, give respect, be respectful of everyone, but be suspicious of him too. Just because one has a long beard does not mean anything. I think the Greek Orthodox priest also has a long beard. Yeah. But he has very different ideas than you and I. So what? The beard doesn't mean anything.
Most of Muslims like that too.
Some, Muslims, doesn't mean anything. So, it pays to learn what Shlomo Melech has to say in Mishlei and in Kohelet, which is another very important book. Next pasuk. Kol acher rash seneuhu af ki mereu rachaku mimenu meradef amarim lo hemma. Also a little bit wordy or complex here, but the idea is very simple. All the kinsmen of a poor man, all his relatives, hate him, and surely his friends distance themselves from him. If his relatives don't like him, then surely his friends. He pursues statements that are not fit for him. Here it says that are fit for him, because the word for him is written here lamed aleph, but you read it lamed vav. Lamed vav lo means for him. The way it's written here is lamed aleph, not for him. So there are two interpretations. Basically, this is what it means. All the relatives of a poor man don't like him. And why is it so? Because the relatives tend to feel it as a burden. They have to support. He's their relative. So they don't like it that he's a poor man, that he's not working, that he does not have a job. And the rabbis tell us, therefore, a person should be very careful not to be a burden on anybody. Otherwise, people won't like him. If you're going to be a burden on people, always asking them for favors and help. Second of all, the rabbis very much encourage one to be employed as the Yonah, the pigeon. The Midrash talks about the pigeon that Noah took into the Teva. She had in her mouth a leaf of an olive tree, and the leaf of an olive tree is bitter. And the pigeon said, I would prefer that my livelihood be as bitter as this leaf of an olive, but it be in the hands of Hashem directly, than to have a livelihood that is sweeter than honey, but to have to depend on people. If Hashem provides one with parnasah, that is the best. But to have to depend on people, it's not always the best thing. And especially if one is a burden on them. So that's why he says that the poor man's relative who feel that burden, they don't like the man. And the more so the friends who are not even his relatives. The last part of the pasuk, Meradef Amarim Lo Hemma, he's pursuing Amarim. Amarim means statements that are not fit to him. What does that mean? He's telling people, oh, I have a rich uncle, I have a rich brother, I have a good friend. These are worthless, the Shlomo Melech says, because for the most part these people will not come out to help you. So why even make the statement that you have a rich brother, a rich relative, a rich friend? These are the facts that people do not like. Someone who does not try to get himself a job and he's dependent on others. He's a burden on others. There are many Gemarot that talk about the importance of a person seeking a job, even if it means washing dishes at a non-kosher restaurant. Washing dishes. But you're able to preserve your dignity, bring food to the table, and not have to open your hand to beg for money. There are Russian Jews who have arrived in Israel who were engineers, but they had no choice. They had to go and do sponja, sweep the floors, if that's all that was available. Some of them were too proud, so they had no money. What's better, to have no money or to let go a little bit of one's pride? The rabbis tell us, let go a little bit of your pride. The rabbis tell us, if you have to, go sell stinking hides. So hides, the skins of animals, stink. Go sell stinking hides and don't say that it's beneath you. It's beneath me. No, don't say that. Go do that if you have to and bring food to the table. Next pasuk. Koneh lev ohev nafsho shomer tevuna limtzo tov. He who acquires sense loves his soul. He who guards understanding will eventually find good. What he's saying over here is one who acquires understanding. What's understanding? Commentaries explain midot tovot. If you like yourself, then one should be working on himself to perfect himself, to perfect his midot, his character. A person who works on himself, it's just like the diet. People go on a diet because they like their physical body. Well, some people do it because they want to be healthy, but still, that's still the physical body, right? Here we're talking about nafsho, the soul, the spirit. If you like your spirit, you care about your spirit, then you have to do what's important to the spirit. You have to work on the midot, on the character. Nobody's born a perfect individual. Everybody has something to perfect, to refine. And one who works on perfecting himself, on refining his character, that's called ohev nafsho. He likes his nefesh. Shomer tevuna limtzo tov, and one who preserves his understanding, preserves that which he has learned, that will help him, limtzo tov, to find good in this world and in the world to come. He does not just learn it, but he preserves it. How do you preserve that which you learned? You review it, you repeat it many times over, so that you do not forget all the learning, all the chokhmah. The next pasuk is very similar to what we just saw before, but there is an additional idea here. Et shekarim lo yinakeh veyafiach kezavim yoved. Here he translates, a false witness will not go unpunished, and one who speaks lies will perish. So a false witness will not go unpunished, we just saw. That at some point he's going to get it. He's not going to go unpunished. A witness, the reason why he puts so much emphasis on witness is because a witness is very, very instrumental in a court of law. He could do a lot of harm. He could do a lot of damage. So Hashem takes care of certain individuals in Olam Hazeh, in this world. He does not wait until Olam Haba. Certain individuals are paid in this world. There's a story that just came to my mind. You're all familiar with how serious bribery is, right? The Torah says that bribery can affect even the wise. And our tradition says that anybody who accepts bribery will become blind. There's such a tradition. If he has accepted bribery, he becomes blind. Because what does a bribery do? It blinds one. So as a result of that, he will be blind. There was a great rabbi in Tunisia who, as he was getting older, became blind. So there are a lot of fools. In every community there's a bunch of clowns and fools. In Tunisia was no exception. And the clowns started saying, he's becoming blind. He must have taken bribes all these years in court. And you know what a rumor can do to an individual? It could ruin his reputation. Terrible. So as soon as he heard that, he felt terrible. He was a tzaddik. He was a righteous man. So he prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know the truth. If there is any truth to what they're saying, then leave me blind for the rest of my life. But if it's completely false, then show the entire community that it's false. Restore my eyesight. And his eyesight was restored. He was able to see again. Many things occur in this world, not necessarily in the world to come. For the most part, the reward and punishment is reserved for the world to come. Life is too short for everything to be, for all business matters, as we can call it, to be resolved and taken care of in this world. So Hashem says, okay, we're going to take care of it over there. But sometimes, if it's something very serious, and there are certain categories that are very serious, Hashem takes care of the business down here. And one of them is false witness, false testimony. Now this false witness, the Shlomo Melech adds over here a few additional words. V'yafiach kezavim yoved. Yoved means that he will be lost, he will perish. What does that mean? What happens to an individual who lies a lot? He eventually believes in his own lies. And he eventually gets into a lot more trouble. And the rabbis tell us what is the punishment of a liar? Even when he speaks the truth, they won't believe him. Even when he begins to speak the truth. In other words, he will perish, not necessarily be destroyed completely, but he himself will be completely lost. Nobody will trust him, even when he speaks the truth. That's the punishment of a liar. Next pasuk. Lo naveh lechsil ta'anug af ki le'eved meshol besarim. Pleasure does not befit a fool, much less a slave to rule over princes. We're talking about pleasures here. As you know, there's all sorts of pleasures. And pleasures could be something good. There's nothing wrong with having a comfortable home. On the contrary, the rabbis tell us that a comfortable home, a beautiful woman, a nice furniture, marchivim da'ato shel adam. They widen a person's da'at. In other words, his horizons, I guess. In other words, they give him a good feeling. He's able to learn well because he has a certain tranquility from having this comfort from a large home, a comfortable home, from a good-looking wife, and from having nice furniture. So there's nothing wrong with it. On the contrary, there is a benefit to be gained from having these things if you can afford it, and if you are blessed to have a beautiful wife. However, the other part of the story is as follows: that when these pleasures come into the hand of a ksil, of a fool, it's no good. It does not befit him. As the pasuk says, "Ve'achalta v'savata, pen tochal v'savata, ve'ram levavecha v'shachachta." If an individual becomes rich, especially if he becomes rich very quickly, he will become arrogant and he will forget Hashem. So there's always this danger that these comforts or these luxuries, because if one has any control over an individual, like a son, a child, one has to be able to limit all these things and not necessarily give him everything he wants, because what he wants may not be fit for him. Instead of being something good and beneficial, he may get himself into trouble. You give a car to a teenager, you know you're taking a big risk. You know why insurance is so much more expensive for teenagers? Because most of the accidents are teenagers. I think if I remember correctly, from 16 to 20. They know the statistics, the insurance companies. They know the statistics very well, right? And therefore, they raise their rates accordingly. So it is not right to just give in, to give anything that the teenager desires. Because lo naveh lechsil ta'anug, it does not befit. I'm not calling the child a fool, but he is susceptible. He does have certain weaknesses. He's still not completely mature. So pleasure does not befit a fool. For the Chachamim, these comforts may be actually good. It may allow them to live a better life. They may be able to achieve a lot more having this comfort of a beautiful, expansive home and a nice wife and furniture. Yeah, but not for everybody. Why? Because it's just like it's just like slaves ruling over princesses. A slave to rule over a prince, what experience does he have? A slave cannot rule over a prince. Does that make any sense? That a slave should rule over a prince? So therefore, exil, since he misuses the pleasures, it's not correct to give to him what his heart desires. One has to limit what exil desires. Next pasuk, Sechel Adam ericha po v'tifarto avor al pasha. It is a good sense for man to be slow to anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. We're talking about being tolerant or slow to anger, to be forgiving. Sechel Adam ericha po, what that means is that when a person was just insulted, and he holds himself back, he controls himself, he does not get angry, that shows that he has sechel, that he has intelligence. An individual who yells back at another individual, especially in public, which is also Hilul Hashem, very insulting, right? That shows that this individual has no sechel. If a person is tolerant, holds himself back, and it's difficult to do, if he does that, who's giving him that idea? It's coming from the sechel, not from the heart. He's using his mind to control his senses. So to be marich af, to be slow to anger, to not respond to every insult, to not yell, that requires sechel. And not everybody uses their sechel. In Hebrew we say, wa'asa b'sechel. In other words, he did the right thing, he used his head to do the right thing. If he did not do the right thing, he may not have used the sechel. He went by his heart. He's angry, he's upset. So it's a beautiful midah, and it's an important midah to be erich apo, to control one's anger, to be tolerant. V'tifarto avor al pasha, and it's his glory. Glory means the beauty of an individual if he's avor al pasha. What's that? If he can pass over a transgression. The commentaries explain that passing over a transgression is a greater quality than being slow to anger. Why? The guy who is slow to anger, basically, this is the way he feels. He's very upset, but he doesn't show it. He doesn't respond. He doesn't react. That's commendable, right? The one who's ma'avir al pesha, lets go of it. Doesn't even think about it anymore. He doesn't hold a grudge. The guy who's erich apo maybe still has a grudge. He just didn't show his anger. So they say avor al pesha is even a greater quality. So much so that there's a story in the Gemara of there was a time when Am Yisrael needed assistance min hashamayim. I forget what it was. And Rabbi Eliezer went down to the Teva to be Hazan, and he said 24 prayers, very, very strong prayers. No response from heaven. Rabbi Akiva came down and he said, Avinu Malkenu, just a simple one request to Hashem. And as soon as he said that, Hashem answered his prayer. The Gemara goes on to say, don't think that Rabbi Akiva is greater than Rabbi Eliezer. It's not so. The reason Rabbi Akiva was answered, because he's ma'avir al midotav. He passes over any transgression. He gives in. He forgives. He doesn't hold a grudge. He just lets go easily. Much more than the other rabbi, who maybe was tolerant, but he had a hard time, or he didn't want to, or whatever. He wasn't as forgiving as Rabbi Akiva. You know, we can't, of course, imagine their level. So it's, you know, I have to be careful not to say anything about Rabbi Eliezer. You know, I'm sure Rabbi Eliezer was a great tzaddik, but he was on the level of Rabbi Akiva of being ma'avir al midotav. He wasn't. That is why Rabbi Akiva's prayers were answered quickly. Ma'avir al midot, that's a tremendous midah, because the rabbis tell us whoever is ma'avir al midotav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gam ke ma'avir al midotav. In other words, if a person is forgiving here to others, Hashem says, you know what? I'll forgive you too. Midah keneged midah. Person who's forgiving, who lets go, who's not makpid on every little thing. There are people who every little thing bothers them, and they go after that thing for the rest of the person's life. They don't forget, they don't forgive, it's always on their mind. And that's a terrible midah. It's a lack of sechel. Because the sechel tells a person, just let go. You're not going to take it with you anyway. Your kids are going to take it, or the lawyers are going to take it. So why make such a big fuss? Why insult people? Why hurt people's feelings? Why go after them? Just forget about it. It's not worth it. What are you going to gain from it? A little bit more money? Maybe, but also aggravation. And chas v'shalom, maybe even a heart attack in the middle of the way. And ulcers on top of that. And you made enemies, and nobody likes you, and the family is broken up because of you. So who needs it? So one needs a lot of tremendous amount of sechel, which is intelligence and creativity, that there should be shalom bayit between a husband and wife, that there should be shalom between brothers, that there should be shalom between kids and their parents. A father can be very upset at his child. And if he does not use his sechel, he can lose that child. The child, when he grows up, will rebel, and he won't want to see his dad anymore. So you have to be very careful. You have to be intelligent. Not always to insist on having it your way. That's called sechel. Sechel adam yaricha po. One who is maricha po, he's using his sechel, he's using his mind. And his glory, the beauty of an individual is if he can be avor al pasha, if he can forgive or pass over transgressions against him. Next pasuk. Naham kakefir za'af melech uchetan al esev retzono. The king's fury is like a lion's roar, but his goodwill is like dew upon the grass. This is a very short pasuk, basically telling us that one should always have emat malchut alav, the fear of king on him. When one sees a king, he has to show respect. Hashem has given him this position. There's a reason why there is a melech. There's a reason why there is authority. If there would not be any authority, everybody would swallow each other up, the rabbis tell us. So one has to be appreciative and be fearful or respectful, actually, just like the lion, the roar of a lion. That is the anger of a melech. In other words, a melech is powerful. And it's like dew on grass when he is approving of you. Commentators explain the reason he points this out over here is he's not talking about just any king, he's talking about a Kadosh Baruch Hu. One should be concerned if Hashem is very upset at him, like the roar of a lion. Or the other way around. If Hashem approves of him, if he's happy with him, it's like dew on grass. You know what dew does to grass? It makes it grow. It's good. In other words, one should be concerned about his relationship with Hashem. Is he happy with me? Is he upset at me? Just like one would fear the wrath or the roar of a lion. Next pasuk is a very, very powerful pasuk. Havot le'aviv ben kesil v'delef tored midyane isha. A foolish son is a calamity of his father. I like the word calamity, because the word avot means, in Yiddish they call it tzures, tzarot tzerurot in Hebrew. Havot, you don't see this word too often, but it means it breaks the parent. It breaks the father. Havot le'aviv ben kesil. If a father has to deal with a foolish child, it is one of the most difficult problems he'll ever face, more than financial troubles. It's a big problem. Here he doesn't tell us what to do about it, but it's obvious. One has to pray a lot. One has to be a good example. If one is not a good example, you can't expect a lot. And by the way, there were a lot of rabbis that prayed to have only girls, because they said, with girls I can at least choose my son-in-law. But with boys, who knows? Hashem Ya'azor that the boys should be good children. But one has to pray, not take it for granted. They all have free will. And even if the parents are good, there's no guarantee. And chas v'shalom, if something turns out no good, it's havot. It's terrible tzarot. It's a calamity to the father if he has a foolish son. And therefore, as we've said before, we talked about this kind of a situation, invest in one's children. Spend the money instead of on a Lexus on Jewish education. Yeah. Give him a tutor if necessary. Invest in your children, so they should not be fools. Now, listen to the second part of the pasuk. Very important too, and just as sad if one is stuck with this one. V'delef tored midyane isha. And the quarrels of a wife are like a constant dripping. Were you ever in your bedroom and there was a leak from the roof? When there's a heavy rain, what do you do at the end? You can't take it, you bring a bucket. Well, what if after you put the bucket there, it drips there, in the other corner? So that's what Shlomo Melech compares a woman who's always quarrelsome or nagging. It's like a delef, it's like a constant drip. What does that do to the family? Tored. It drives them away from the house. After a while, you're not going to put buckets. You're going to get out of the house or out of the room until we call the roofer, Boaz, to come fix the roof. But in the meantime, it's a big problem. Now, with a roof, you can fix. Could you fix a quarrelsome woman? Not so easy. So, what does she do? She drives everybody away. What can you do? Now, what does he say this for? He says, because whoever is stuck with something like this, you should be understanding of him. He's going through Gehenom in Olam Hazeh. Yeah, rabbis tell us whoever had a terrible woman in this world, he has a first-class ticket to Gan Eden, because he already had Gehenom in this world. Open, you go. You already have it here. I always have to be fair to the women. If they had a terrible husband, Chaz Shalom, they also go to Gan Eden. Yeah, it's obviously the same thing. But anyway, this is also something very painful. Rabbis tell us, wait a minute, if somebody has a terrible wife, why didn't he just divorce her? What's the tikkun? Divorce. The problem is, the Gemara says, not always is divorce possible when there are small kids in the family, and you want to keep the house together. Or her ktuvah, the alimony or whatever you're going to have to support her is very expensive. So there are situations where people want to divorce, but they can't divorce. They're stuck in a sense. What does this tell us? Again, this requires tefillah. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the last pasuk of tonight, the next pasuk. Why is tefillah so important when it comes to shidduchim? But the message in this pasuk is that this is a big source of trouble for the house. If the woman, who is also the mother, is not cooperative, is quarrelsome, she can give one a very, very hard time. She drives people away. Hashem Yazor, that one should not fall into something like that. The last pasuk, very famous pasuk, Bait v'hon nachlat avot u'me'adonai isha maskalet. A house and wealth are the heritage of the fathers, but an intelligent wife is from Hashem. There are things that one inherits. A father can leave over money to his child. A child can have money because of his mazal, his own personal mazal. He can have money because he inherited the money, or he can have money because of a beracha. There's various possibilities, there's various ways that a person can obtain money. There's some money that has no beracha, So if the money came from a Yerusha, there's no guarantee that it will last. A lot of children have been known to just spend the money in Vegas very quickly. They don't know how to use the money. Now, but if the money is a beracha, our tradition says it will stay for various generations in the family. There was once there's a story of an individual who was going around town with a beautiful fur coat, a nice hat, but with torn shoes and with patches on his pants. Could you imagine this kind of a scene? In other words, part of his clothing were beautiful, part of it were rags. And nobody understood what kind of a mismatch that is. Why does he do that? So somebody once followed him home, and he says, that's strange. This man who appears like a poor man, somewhat like a poor man, lives in this big mansion. He takes a closer look and he sees that all the windows are broken. It's a dilapidated building. That's even stranger. Big building, big home, many rooms and bathrooms, dilapidated. So he didn't understand what's going on here. He looked into it a little further and he found out that this man was always a poor man. He did not have a good mazal. He simply inherited this home from an uncle. This big house he inherited from an uncle, and he also inherited the coat and the hat. In other words, so what you saw on him was what he inherited, but this was not him. His mazal was no good. He was a beggar, and he will remain a beggar and a poor man. But he inherited something. Before Proposition 13 passed, for those of you who are familiar with property taxes, 1978, the law in California was that, you can raise property taxes according to the market value. Every 3 years they had a round of reappraisals approximately. They took neighborhood by neighborhood. I worked there for 15 and a half years. I began after this proposition. So anyway, what was happening is that if somebody inherited a home, imagine you inherited a beautiful home in Hancock Park, 6,000 square feet, right? With a view of the golf course, right? what would happen? The taxes would go up, and eventually you would be forced to sell the house because you won't be able to afford the taxes. Right? So what happened is they passed Proposition 13, that they only assess your property once when you buy it, based on the market value of what you paid or what it is. And after that, only when you add additional square footage, major renovation, remodeling, was adding something you did not have before. Otherwise, they don't reappraise it. Same thing if a child inherits a property from his parent, there's something called Proposition 58, that it's exempt from reappraisal. Even though it's a change in ownership, it's like a sale, they don't reappraise it because as long as you fill out that document. Then it was Proposition 60 for people 55 and over. They want to transfer their low tax to another home. They sell this home, they're going to buy another home. Now, their older home, the taxes are since 1975. They've been going up only for inflation, 2% max. Now they want to buy a new home. They want to retire in a smaller home. So they're going to sell their bigger house, and now they're going to have to pay taxes who knows how many times more. They can't afford it. Their Social Security doesn't cover the taxes. So many laws were passed, propositions, to help these people cope with the same level that they were used to. Why did I give you this whole speech? Because there are individuals whose mazal is limited in such a way that they don't have extra money. And if they get that extra money, it's maybe an inheritance. But on their own, they can't make it. And that's what he says over here. There are things that are transferable from father to son, like a bayit vahon, nachlat avot, a home and wealth. This can be transferred. These are things that one inherits, or heritage. But Hashem isha maskalet. But from Hashem is an intelligent woman. These last words are very important. The rabbis tell us in the Gemara, Mina Torah, Mina Nevi'im, Umina Ktuvim, Hashem isha leish. We see 3 pesukim, one in the Torah, one in the Nevi'im, and one in the Ktuvim, that is clear proof that a woman or one's wife is from heaven, decreed. In the Torah, what does it say? Hashem yatsa davar. Right, by Rivka, Lavan, Betuel, they said, Ki Hashem hi, or Hashem yatsa davar. They agreed that it was Hashem. By Shimshon HaGibor, the parents didn't know what's going on over here. Their son Shimshon is going to marry a non-Jewish girl, Dalila. This is from Hashem. Even though Hashem would have preferred him marry a Jewish girl, but since he went after her looks, Hashem says, you know what, you want her looks? All right, I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And it was as a result of his relationship with Dalila, he's going to get closer to the Pelishtim and he's going to fight them. But unfortunately, he fell for it too. So that was also, in a sense, brought about by Hashem. And the third example is Min HaKtuvim. Hashem isha maskalet, an intelligent woman. In other words, what kind of a woman does a person eventually get? That is also determined by Hashem. This is a very significant point, because the reason why Hashem has to get involved in shidduchim, even though we have shalichim, shatchanim, Hashem is the ultimate shatchan, is because we're dealing with neshamot, with souls. And only Hashem knows which souls belong with each other. Nobody can know that. You might think you have a great match. And sometimes it appears to us, they would make a great match. Only Hashem knows if they would make a great match. And unfortunately, a lot of people...
Like you were saying, Hashem knows the match, but particularly the couple, the shadchan is like the...
Yeah, there can be a shaliach. You can bump into her,
they're not in a position to say, this is your match.
No, they're not in a position. Only a tzaddik who has Ruach HaKodesh is in the position to say, this is your match, this is your soulmate. Right. Nobody can just say that.
The couples, I think, are from restaurants.
Yeah.
Couples know it.
After a while, they know it. Yeah, if they're soulmates or not. Sure, there's a chemistry is there. They can tell. But this is an important point, because since this is from Hashem, one should not just assume that he's going to get her. Because as we read with the story of Yaakov is concerned about Esav coming. Esav is approaching. Why? Hashem promised you'll be okay. He'll protect you. Shema yigrom achet, the commentaries tell us. Sometimes a sin on one's record can ruin it for one. In other words, it might be delayed, the shidduch. He may not find her right away. She may have to go through another man in the meantime, or he may have to go through another woman until they eventually get together. There are many things that can happen up until the point when they finally meet each other. if they are for each other. So in order for that to happen smoothly, a tremendous amount of tefillah is needed. In other words, one has to have the right ideas. As I mentioned earlier today in the evening, one has to be very careful not to marry for money. Because one who marries for money, just for money, the rabbis tell us his children are not going to be good children. Chas v'shalom. At least he should not put an emphasis on money. If he gets money, a nice dowry, he should be happy and thankful, but not to argue about how much you should get, because that is not a good sign for what kind of neshamot are going to come down to that couple. They don't send the best children for somebody who's after money. One should look for good midot, good character. One should look for a woman or a husband who's God-fearing, and for one who's healthy. These are the three basic things. Obviously, on top of that, you want good chemistry, and you want as much as possible similar outlooks, obviously. But you can't avoid sometimes having different backgrounds. You can't avoid having sometimes differences in height. As long as one is not 4'11", the other one is 6'10". That looks a little bit, strange. No, it's not my idea. The Gemara says so. Just doesn't look right. Strange. Yeah. Age difference, it depends if the two agree to it. There's many things that are okay, that you can live with, and therefore you have to be very careful not to be picky. In the end, we have to have complete emunah in Hashem, that the shidduch will come about through Hashem, as long as we don't interfere in His work. We let Him do His job, we pray to Him, we depend on Him, and B'ezrat Hashem it will happen whenever it needs to happen. B'sha'at uva mutzlachat.